What if an entire city vanished in a single day, leaving behind frozen shadows of people's last breaths, their terror etched into history forever? That's exactly what happened to Pompeii, the Roman resort town buried alive by Mount Vesuvius in 79 CE. This wasn't just any disaster. It was a tragedy so sudden, so violent, that families were caught mid-scream, streets were buried in ash, and life itself was sealed under stone for nearly 2,000 years. But Pompeii's story doesn't stop there. From ignored warnings and desperate survival attempts to its haunting rediscovery and the chilling plaster casts of its victims, the city continues to whisper its secrets. And with millions living in the shadow of Vesuvius today, the question is, could history repeat itself? Stay tuned, because the destruction of Pompeii is far more shocking than you think. A city of wealth on the edge of danger, Pompeii wasn't some quiet provincial town. By the 1st century CE, it was a booming Roman resort city with nearly 20,000 people calling it home. Wealthy Romans flocked there for its theaters, hot baths, and villas decorated with vibrant frescoes. The streets buzzed with bakers pulling loaves from stone ovens, merchants shouting prices at the market, and artisans chiseling statues for the elite. The city thrived because of its location. Fertile volcanic soil from Mount Vesuvius made vineyards flourish, producing wines famous across the empire. From the outside, it seemed like paradise. Sunshine, prosperity, and culture all at the foot of a mountain. But that mountain was no ordinary backdrop. Mount Vesuvius was a volcano, one of the most dangerous in the world. Sediment analysis today shows it had erupted more than 50 times before 79 CE. Yet Pompeians either didn't know or didn't care. To them, Vesuvius was part of the landscape, a silent giant that had been asleep for generations. The irony is chilling. Pompeii's beauty, wealth, and location were the very things that would one day destroy it. But beneath the surface, the earth was restless, and the first warnings of disaster had already begun. The warnings. Nobody listened to 17 years before Mount Vesuvius erupted. Pompeii had already been shaken by disaster. In 62 CE, a powerful earthquake struck the city, toppling temples, cracking aqueducts, and damaging thousands of homes. The quake was so severe that even years later, many buildings were still being repaired. But instead of treating the earthquake as a warning, life carried on. The citizens rebuilt their theaters, patched up their villas, and kept trading in the marketplace. Pompeii was too valuable, too prosperous for anyone to consider leaving. By 79 CE, the earth began trembling again. Smaller quakes rattled the city in the days leading up to the eruption, breaking water pipes and disrupting daily life. But instead of fleeing, many Pompeians shrugged it off. After all, earthquakes weren't new. They had lived through them before. To most, this was just the mountain grumbling, nothing more. And while some whispered that the gods were angry, others trusted that divine protection would keep them safe. It was a dangerous mix of faith and denial. In hindsight, those tremors were the Earth's final warning, a warning that no one truly heeded. And then came the morning of August 24th, when the sky itself turned against Pompeii. The sky turns against Pompeii. On the morning of August 24th, 79 CE, the people of Pompeii woke up to a day that seemed ordinary until they looked toward the mountain. Pliny the Younger, a 17-year-old across the Bay of Naples, later described what he saw. His mother had pointed out a strange cloud rising from Mount Vesuvius. At first glance, it looked almost beautiful, towering high, shaped like an umbrella pine tree. But as it rose higher, it spread out, blotched with ash and dirt, twisting into unnatural colors. It was unlike anything the Romans had ever seen. Before long, the skies began to darken. Fine volcanic ash drifted down. At first, a light dusting on rooftops and streets. But within hours, it thickened into a heavy, choking blanket. Ash piled up at a terrifying rate, nearly 6 inches every hour. Imagine standing there, watching the sun disappear behind a curtain of smoke, while a gray snowstorm of ash rained from the heavens. For those who tried to breathe, the air grew hotter, thicker, and harder to inhale. Some residents decided to flee, abandoning their homes and rushing toward the countryside, but many stayed behind, confused and frightened, hoping the storm would pass. The eruption was only beginning, and they had no idea the true horror still to come. Because the ash was just the beginning, the mountain had far worse in store for those who remained. panic, chaos, and desperate survival. By the afternoon of August 24th, Pompeii was in chaos. Ash blanketed every rooftop, cinders rained from the sky, and houses groaned under the crushing weight. Then came the pumice, white stones at first, then gray as the volcano dug deeper into the earth. Some pieces were small enough to scatter across the streets, others large enough to smash through roofs. Families huddled inside their homes as walls cracked and ceilings caved in. Excavations show skulls fractured not from fire but from collapsing stone. It was death by weight, as the city's own buildings became traps. Others tried their luck outdoors. Pliny the Younger describes a haunting sight, people wrapping pillows around their heads and tying them in place with cloth, a desperate attempt to shield themselves from the hail of falling rocks. They staggered into the streets, coughing and stumbling through knee-deep ash, praying they could outrun the storm. And on the waters, Pliny the Elder fought to save lives. As commander of Rome's fleet, he ordered his ships toward the coast, but pumice choked the sea, floating in thick layers that jammed the oars. The air filled with fire and smoke. Stones rained onto the deck. The sea itself retreated, stranding vessels dangerously close to shore. Pliny pressed forward, fearless or reckless, but the poisonous fumes finally overwhelmed him. His rescue mission turned into one of history's most tragic endings. For those still alive in Pompeii, every choice was deadly. Stay inside and risk collapse, or run into the open and face a storm of falling stone. But as terrifying as it was, this was only the prelude. When night fell, Vesuvius unleashed its most merciless weapon, the pyroclastic doom. As night fell on August 24th, the eruption entered its most lethal phase. The mountain unleashed something far deadlier than ash or falling stone, pyroclastic flows. These were avalanches of superheated gas and ash racing down the slopes at terrifying speeds, nearly 100 kilometers per hour. The air itself turned into fire, reaching temperatures hot enough to strip flesh from bone in seconds. No one caught in its path stood a chance. The first surge slammed into the nearby town of Herculaneum, instantly incinerating anyone left behind. There was no time to scream, no time to run. Wooden beams, rooftops, and human bodies alike were obliterated in the wave of heat. Pompeii, a little farther from the mountain, endured for a few more hours. Some survivors may have believed they had lived through the worst. But around midnight, the flows reached the city. The surging clouds of ash and gas poured through the streets, collapsing walls, suffocating lungs, and sealing Pompeii's fate. Archaeologists have uncovered the haunting evidence of these final moments. Entire families frozen mid-motion, some shielding children, others clutching loved ones, many caught mid-breath, dogs curled in chains, citizens crouched in prayer, victims locked in expressions of agony. The heat had captured them in an instant, turning Pompeii into a city of statues. By dawn on August 25th, it was over. Where a thriving resort town once stood, there was only silence, buried under more than 15 feet of volcanic rock and ash. Pompeii was gone, a city erased in less than 24 hours. For centuries, Pompeii remained hidden beneath the earth, until one day, the world rediscovered its secrets. Rediscovery and haunting revelations. For more than 1,600 years, Pompeii lay buried in silence. Entire generations lived and died without ever knowing that beneath their feet was a city frozen in time. Then, in 1748, excavations began. At first, the work was less about history and more about treasure hunting. Kings and nobles wanted statues, mosaics, and jewelry ripped from the ruins to decorate their palaces. Much of Pompeii's heritage was looted long before it could be studied. But in the 19th century, archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli introduced a new approach. Instead of tearing artifacts from the earth, he carefully documented the site. And with one haunting innovation, he gave the world its most unforgettable glimpse of Pompeii's tragedy. As excavators dug, they noticed strange hollow spaces in the hardened ash. Fiorelli realized these were the voids left by decomposed bodies. He poured plaster into the cavities, and when the plaster hardened, what emerged were eerily perfect casts of Pompeii's victims. Suddenly, the final moments of the city were revealed in agonizing detail. A mother clutching her child, a man shielding his face, a dog twisting in chains. They weren't just ruins anymore. They were people captured in their last seconds of life. These plaster figures shocked the world. Pompeii wasn't a myth or a distant story. It was real, human, and devastating. Visitors walked among the frozen dead, seeing not just history, but tragedy made flesh. But even rediscovered, Pompeii's struggles weren't over, and the shadow of Vesuvius still looms large today. Modern struggles and looming dangers. The rediscovery of Pompeii turned it into one of the world's most important archaeological archaeological sites. But even in modern times, the city has faced new battles. In 1980, a powerful earthquake shook southern Italy, damaging parts of the site and forcing archaeologists to halt their excavations. For the first time, the focus shifted from digging up new treasures to trying to preserve what had already been uncovered. Yet nature didn't stop testing Pompeii. In 2010 and 2011, several ancient buildings collapsed after heavy rains, including sections of the city's walls and even a gladiator training school. Critics warned that neglect, underfunding, and poor conservation efforts were putting Pompeii at risk of vanishing all over again. Today, excavation is tightly restricted. Instead, scientists and historians concentrate on protecting the ruins that remain. But while Pompeii itself lies silent, the volcano that destroyed it is anything but. Mount Vesuvius is still very much alive. Its most recent eruption was in 1944, when it destroyed villages, farmlands, and even an Allied airbase during World War II. And experts warn it will erupt again. The only question is when. Over 3 million people now live in Vesuvius's danger zone, many of them in Naples and surrounding towns. A major eruption could spark one of the largest refugee crises in modern European history. Just like in 79 CE, lives and homes could be wiped out in a matter of hours. Which brings us to the haunting truth. Pompeii's story is not just about the past. It's a warning for the future. Pompeii's legacy and warning. Pompeii's destruction wasn't just a tragedy of the ancient world. It was a reminder of how fragile human civilization really is. In less than 24 hours, a thriving city of nearly 20,000 people vanished, its streets buried, its families frozen in time. And yet, those very ruins have become a mirror for us, showing what happens when warnings are ignored and nature reclaims its power. The plaster casts remind us that these weren't nameless figures in a history book. They were parents, children, soldiers, and slaves. People who woke up expecting an ordinary day, only to find themselves etched into eternity. Today, millions live in the shadow of Vesuvius. Scientists monitor it constantly, but the truth is, no one can predict the exact moment the mountain will awaken again. If it did, history could repeat itself, only this time with modern cities and millions of lives at stake. Pompeii is not just a story about the past. It's a warning for the present and for the future. So what do you think? If Vesuvius erupted tomorrow, would we be any more prepared than the Pompeians were nearly 2,000 years ago? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories of history's greatest tragedies, make sure to subscribe, because there are plenty more shocking truths waiting to be revealed. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden story of Pompeii, make sure to give this video a like. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss more shocking history, untold mysteries, and forgotten legends. Drop a comment below and tell us what disaster, event, or figure should we cover next. Your idea could be the star of our next video. Until then, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.